It was a Friday night, and my friends and I were bored. We decided to play a game of football on the old abandoned field in town, known for its ghost stories. They said that many years ago, a promising player named Lucas mysteriously died during a crucial game. Since then, the field was abandoned, and rumors of supernatural activities began to circulate. We arrived at the field around 11 p.m., with only the moonlight illuminating the place. The grass was tall and unkempt, and the rusty goalposts gave the field a grim look. We nervously laughed at the ghost stories as we put our backpacks down and started playing. The first few minutes were normal, everyone running and kicking the ball, but soon I noticed something strange. The ball seemed to have a mind of its own, changing direction inexplicably. My friends noticed too and started making jokes, trying to hide the growing fear. That's when I heard a whisper. I stopped, looked around, and saw no one. I thought it was my imagination, but the whisper returned, this time louder and clearer. It seemed to say my name, Gabriel, Gabriel. I tried to ignore it and keep playing, but the atmosphere was getting heavier. The shadows of the trees around the field seemed to move, and a cold wind started blowing, even though the night was calm. My friends were visibly uncomfortable too. Suddenly, the ball was kicked out of the field and landed near one of the goalposts. I went to get it, but as I got closer, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a figure standing in the darkness, dressed in an old football uniform. Its eyes glowed with a ghostly light. I stepped back, tripping over my own feet, and shouted for my friends. They ran over, but the figure had disappeared. I tried to explain what I saw, but they were skeptical, thinking I was playing a prank. However, something in their expressions showed they were starting to believe. We decided to keep playing, but now we were all nervous. That's when things started to get really scary. The field lights, which never worked, suddenly turned on, bathing the place in a pale, flickering light. In the middle of the field, the figure appeared again, this time closer, and everyone could see it. The figure raised an arm, pointing to the goalposts where Lucas had died. The ground started to tremble, and a sound of moaning echoed across the field. We ran to grab our things and leave, but the figure blocked our way, floating in the air with a look of pure hatred. We finally managed to escape and ran as fast as we could away from that cursed place. When we reached the safety of our homes, no one could speak. We all knew what we saw was real, and that field was truly haunted. Since that night, none of us had the courage to return to the field. But things started to get even stranger. We received mysterious messages, whispers in the middle of the night, and visions of the figure in our dreams. Now, we are determined to find out the truth about what happened to Lucas and why he still haunts that field. Something tells us the story is far from over, and we have the feeling we are being watched, monitored by something or someone who doesn't want us to uncover their secrets. And so, our search for answers continues, with the certainty that the worst is yet to come. After that night, we all knew we couldn't just forget what happened on the football field. The figure of Lucas, the haunted player, stayed in our minds. We decided to meet in my basement, a place where we could discuss without being interrupted. Marcos, the most skeptical of the group, was messing with his phone, trying to find more information about Lucas and his mysterious death. I found something, he said, catching our attention. It seems Lucas didn't die of natural causes. There are rumors that he was murdered. We all fell silent. Murder? That would explain the restless spirit. But why? Who would do such a thing? Anna, always the most sensitive of the group, was clearly disturbed. We need to find out the truth, she said. Maybe it will help calm Lucas's spirit. We agreed to investigate further. We started by talking to the oldest residents in town, those who still remembered the tragic incident. Most people refused to talk about it, as if they were afraid. But eventually, we found someone willing to share the story. Mrs. Clara, a longtime resident of the town, invited us to her home and told us what she knew. Lucas was a talented young man, full of life and promise. But he had enemies. On the day of the decisive game, he had a heated argument with one of the players from the opposing team, a guy named Roberto. After that, Lucas was found dead on the field, and everyone said it was a heart attack. But I never believed that. Clara paused, her eyes lost in old memories. There were many rumors, you know? They said Roberto was involved in dark things, that he was jealous of Lucas. But nothing was ever proven. We went home with more questions than answers. Did Roberto still live in town? Did he know something? We decided that the next step would be to find Roberto and confront him. After some research, we discovered that Roberto worked as a security guard in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The next night, we headed there, ready to get answers. The warehouse was a creepy place, with dark corridors and full of shadows. We found Roberto sitting in a chair, looking tired and worn out. As we approached, he looked at us with a mixture of curiosity and exhaustion. We came to talk about Lucas, Marco said bluntly. Roberto sighed deeply and looked at the ground. Lucas, he murmured. It's been a long time, but I knew this day would come back to haunt me. He told us the truth. On that fateful day, the rivalry between him and Lucas had reached a boiling point. Roberto admitted that, in a fit of rage, he pushed Lucas during the game, causing his fatal fall. He hid the truth, and the remorse consumed him ever since. I never meant to kill him, Roberto said, tears in his eyes. It was an accident, but I was too cowardly to confess. Since then, Lucas's spirit hasn't left me in peace. Our group was silent. Finally, we had the truth, but the question was, what to do with this information? Anna, with her sensitivity, suggested we perform a ritual to help Lucas's soul find peace. We went to the football field, now more determined than ever. We took Roberto with us, believing he should be part of the reconciliation process. We arrived at the field at midnight, under the pale moonlight. We formed a circle and, holding hands, began to recite a prayer, asking for forgiveness and peace for Lucas's soul. Roberto, in tears, begged for Lucas's forgiveness, promising to do whatever it took to make amends. Suddenly, the field was enveloped in a thick fog, and Lucas's figure appeared in the center of the circle. He looked at us with an expression of sadness but also acceptance. Slowly, the fog began to dissipate, and Lucas's figure vanished, leaving a sense of peace in the air. We thought it was all over, but as we left the field, a low, whispering voice reached our ears. This isn't over yet. There are darker things lurking. The field fell silent again, but we knew our journey was far from over. Something more sinister was coming, and we were determined to find out what it was. That night, we could barely sleep. The whispering voice echoed in our minds, and the feeling that something was still coming kept us uneasy. The next day, we gathered again to discuss our next steps. We decided to return to the football field in daylight to see if we could find more clues. When we arrived, the field seemed normal, but the atmosphere was still heavy. We scoured the area, looking for anything that might help us understand what was still haunting the place. That's when we found an old metal box buried near the goalposts. Inside the box, there were old newspaper clippings, letters, and a diary. The letters were from Lucas to a friend, describing his fears and suspicions that something dark was happening with the opposing team. In the diary, Lucas mentioned seeing Roberto and other players performing strange and macabre rituals, believing it would give them an advantage in the game. The truth was even darker than we had imagined. Roberto and some team members had become involved with occult forces, and Lucas's death was the result of a ritual gone wrong. This explained why Lucas's spirit couldn't rest. We decided to confront Roberto again, this time with the evidence in hand. When we found him, he turned pale and admitted everything. He hadn't just pushed Lucas. He had participated in a malicious ritual that went out of control. We knew that to end the curse once and for all, we needed to undo the ritual. We returned to the football field that same night, armed with Lucas's diary and the instructions to reverse the spell. We formed a circle again, but this time with Roberto in the center, repentant and ready to redeem himself. We followed the instructions meticulously, reciting the words from the diary. The night was colder than ever, and a sense of tension filled the air. Suddenly, Lucas's figure appeared again, but this time, he wasn't alone. Indistinct shadows began to emerge from the trees surrounding the field, encircling us. It was as if all the souls tormented by Roberto's rituals were there, waiting for justice. With one final cry, Roberto begged for forgiveness. The shadows began to dissipate, and Lucas's figure slowly waved before disappearing. A sense of peace finally settled over the place. We left the field that night knowing that the curse had finally been broken. But we knew that the dark forces that had been awakened were just waiting for a new opportunity to wreak havoc. And it was our responsibility to ensure that it never happened again. Thank you for watching another Dark Tales video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any scary stories. See you next time, and beware of the dark.